He walks in the footsteps of Jesus, but when the cameras stop, he walks alone. Jonathan Roumie, the face of Christ in The Chosen, has moved hearts around the world with his powerful, soul-stirring portrayal. Millions see him as a symbol of faith, hope, and divine love. But what most don't see is the man behind the role, the one who goes home to silence, to stillness, to a life without a partner. At 50, with fame, admiration, and a growing spiritual legacy, Jonathan remains single. Why? Is it by choice, by circumstance, or by something deeper, something sacred and painful that only he truly understands? The answer isn't simple, and what you're about to discover may change the way you see not just Jonathan Roumie, but your own understanding of love, purpose, and calling. Jonathan Roumie wasn't born into the spotlight. His journey to global recognition didn't come overnight. It came through years of struggle, surrender, and spiritual transformation. Long before he was the face of The Chosen, Jonathan was an actor in Los Angeles, navigating the harsh terrain of an industry built on image, fame, and constant rejection. He took voiceover jobs, small roles, and anything else that could pay the rent. There were moments of doubt, days when food was scarce, and nights when he questioned whether he'd ever make it. But even in those difficult years, something stirred in him, a quiet, persistent faith that there was more to life than just success. That faith didn't immediately lead him to The Chosen, but it began to shape his heart in unseen ways. He began to pray more deeply. He started choosing projects more carefully, saying no to roles that didn't align with his values. Still, he lived like many others in the entertainment world, searching for meaning in the midst of chaos. He dated, like anyone else, hoping to find connection, someone to walk with him. But those relationships didn't last. They felt good in the moment, but lacked depth, shared purpose, and often spiritual alignment. Love slipped through his fingers again and again, not because he was unworthy, but because something within him was shifting. Then, The Chosen happened. A role that was supposed to be another job turned out to be a divine appointment. Playing Jesus changed Jonathan, not just professionally, but personally, spiritually, emotionally. Suddenly, everything he believed about love, purpose, and relationships had to be reevaluated. Because when you spend your days walking in the sandals of the Son of God, you don't come home the same man. The camera may stop rolling, but the transformation doesn't. And for Jonathan, that transformation came with a heavy cost: loneliness. He found himself in a strange place, loved by millions, but still alone, admired for his portrayal of divine love, yet lacking a hand to hold at the end of the day. It wasn't that he didn't want companionship, it wasn't that he wasn't looking, but the deeper his walk with God became, the harder it became to find someone who truly understood that walk. Because how do you explain to someone that your whole life is now shaped by something unseen, something sacred, something so heavy it leaves you emotionally raw after every day on set? Jonathan began to realize that the old way of dating wouldn't work anymore. Casual connections, shared interests, and surface-level faith weren't enough. He needed someone who didn't just believe in God, but who lived it, who prayed not just at meals, but in the dark nights of the soul, who understood that intimacy isn't just physical or emotional, but spiritual, that love is a reflection of God's covenant, not just chemistry. So he stopped dating like before. He started saying no more, often. And with every no, the silence grew louder. The waiting became heavier. But he held on, not out of pride or fear, but because he knew what he was waiting for. He wasn't waiting for perfection. He was waiting for someone whose spirit would meet his, whose journey would align with his, whose faith would not just accompany his, but fuel it. People often ask, how can someone like him be single? They assume fame should bring options, that goodness should guarantee love. But Jonathan's version of goodness isn't just about being kind or charming, it's about surrender. It's about choosing obedience to God over comfort. It's about turning down roles that would pay well but compromise values. It's about fasting, praying, and seeking God's will, even when it hurts. And it does hurt. Jonathan has admitted it. The ache of going home after a powerful scene, emotionally drained, with no one there to debrief with. the sting of watching others fall in love while he waits in solitude, the isolation that comes with being admired for playing Jesus, but not always being seen as Jonathan. But through it all, he remains grounded, not bitter, not resentful, just patient. He believes God is doing something in the waiting, that every moment of loneliness is preparing him for something greater. And maybe, just maybe, preparing someone else to meet him where he is. In a world that glorifies quick love, temporary connections, and compromise, Jonathan's story is rare. It's not glamorous, it's not flashy, but it's honest. It's the story of a man who chose to walk a narrow road even when it meant walking alone. And that choice, however painful, is what makes him who he is today. When Jonathan Roumie accepted the role of Jesus in The Chosen, he didn't just take on a character, he took on a burden. This was not just another acting job, it was a sacred responsibility, one that came with spiritual consequences and emotional weight most people could never imagine. And as the series gained global attention, something else grew quietly behind the fame, an invisible wall between him and the world around him. Jonathan's days on set are often emotionally intense. He doesn't just act, he enters the heart of Jesus. He carries people's pain. He embodies compassion. He feels the weight of every miracle, every betrayal, every crucifixion. And though the role ends when the director yells "cut," the spiritual energy doesn't just vanish. It stays with him. It lingers. It often leaves him emotionally exhausted, spiritually tender, and longing for deep rest. Not just for his body, but for his soul. This is not something you can explain to just anyone. Most people expect actors to laugh after the camera stops, to move on, to leave their work behind. But for Jonathan, The Chosen is not just a series, it's a mission. And with that mission comes isolation. People see him as a spiritual leader, a role model, even a modern saint. They project their hopes onto him, but rarely do they ask him what he needs, what he fears, what he longs for when the lights go out and the crowd is gone. It's this very image, the perfect Christian man, that sometimes keeps potential partners at a distance. Some women are intimidated, others idealize him, placing him on a pedestal so high that they forget he is human. They forget he gets tired, that he has doubts, that he has wounds from the past. And in their awe, they don't connect with the real man beneath the robe. Jonathan has spoken before about the loneliness that comes with spiritual leadership. People assume he's always strong, always anchored, always close to God, but he has confessed. There are days when he feels distant from God, days when he prays and hears nothing, nights when the silence is so loud it drowns everything else. And during those moments, more than anything, he wishes for someone, not to fix him, not to rescue him, but to see him, to understand without him having to explain, to sit with him in silence, and still feel like everything is okay. But finding that kind of love is hard, especially when your life is no longer ordinary. Jonathan can't walk into a cafe without someone recognizing him. He can't go on a date without being photographed. And most importantly, he can't afford to give his heart to someone who doesn't fully grasp what his calling requires. Because this isn't just about chemistry or attraction, it's about purpose, alignment, spiritual depth. He has tried dating within the industry. He has tried dating outside of it, but again and again, he finds himself coming back to the same truth. He would rather be single and spiritually aligned than in a relationship that pulls him away from God. That choice, though noble, comes with a price, a heavy one. It means watching others celebrate anniversaries while he marks another birthday alone. It means attending weddings and wondering if his will ever come. It means praying not just for a partner, but for the strength to endure the wait. And still, through all of it, Jonathan does not waver. He continues to believe that God is not punishing him, but preparing him for a love that is rooted not in fame, not in status, but in spiritual maturity. A love that will not only stand beside him in public, but kneel with him in private prayer. A love that will not compete with his calling, but complement it. He has grown more selective, not out of arrogance, but out of reverence. He knows his life is no longer his own. Every decision he makes now affects the message of the chosen, the faith of his followers, and the witness he carries. He can't afford casual anymore. He can't afford temporary. He's waiting for something eternal. That kind of waiting tests a man. It reveals what he's made of. And Jonathan has chosen, again and again, to be refined by that waiting rather than grow bitter from it. He's not chasing the next relationship to fill the void. He's letting the void shape him, letting it teach him patience, humility, and surrender. There's a sacred kind of loneliness that only a few ever experience, the kind that prepares someone to carry something holy. Jonathan walks in that loneliness daily, and while the world sees a confident actor with millions of fans, behind the scenes is a man on his knees, asking, trusting, and believing that love, when it finally arrives, will be worth every tear, every night alone, every prayer whispered into silence. This isn't just the story of why Jonathan Roumie is single, it's the story of what it costs to follow a calling, and the quiet hope that, somewhere out there, someone is being prepared for him just as he has been prepared for them. Behind Jonathan Roumie's calm voice and peaceful smile lies a heart that feels deeply, deeper than most can imagine. He's not just someone looking for love. He's someone who understands the meaning of love. Not the surface kind, not the type found in shallow promises or brief romantic highs. Jonathan longs for a love that mirrors the divine, steady, forgiving, and rooted in truth. But here's the challenge. The world around him doesn't always value that kind of love. In an age of dating apps and fast connections, real emotional depth is hard to find. People swipe, match, and move on. But Jonathan, he's looking for someone who doesn't want to skip to the good part. He wants someone who is willing to walk through the quiet, uncomfortable spaces with him. Someone who sees waiting not as weakness, but as a sign of spiritual strength. There's a soft ache that comes with loving from a distance, loving someone who hasn't arrived yet. Jonathan has spoken about this in private interviews, how he sometimes feels like his heart is holding space for someone he's never even met. He imagines her often, not her face or her appearance, but her spirit. A woman who carries grace, who doesn't compete with the spotlight, but walks humbly beside it. A woman who prays before she speaks, who loves the man, not the image, who sees him not as Jesus from The Chosen, but as Jonathan, the man who laughs too loud at dad jokes, who sometimes forgets to eat when he's filming, who breaks down in tears during prayer. And while many people admire him from a distance, few truly know him. They know the character, they know the platform, but they don't know the quiet battles, the nights spent wrestling with doubt, the times he's asked God why the wait is so long, the fear that maybe he's too late, that maybe his chance at love passed him by while he was too busy following his calling. Yet, even in these fears, Jonathan remains anchored in faith. He doesn't try to force timing. He doesn't chase affection to silence the ache. He waits, and not the kind of waiting that feels like sitting still, but an active kind of waiting, a prayerful one. He surrounds himself with godly counsel, with friends who keep him grounded, with practices that keep him connected to the one who knows his heart best. He believes that love should not just feel right, it should be right. It should challenge you to grow. It should draw you closer to God, not further away. And because of that, he's unwilling to settle for anything less. He's seen what happens when people compromise their values for temporary comfort, and he's chosen a different path, a harder one, a lonelier one, but one that leads to something lasting. Jonathan has also shared how this path has refined him. It has taught him patience in the deepest sense, not just the ability to wait, but to wait without bitterness. It has taught him how to be happy for others, even when he feels forgotten, how to celebrate someone else's love story while still trusting God is writing his. He knows people are curious. They ask why someone so godly, so good-hearted, is still single at 50. And though he smiles politely when they do, the truth is more sacred than most expect. It's not about fear. It's not about pickiness. It's about obedience. Jonathan is not looking for someone to complete him. He's already whole. He's looking for someone who will walk with him in purpose, someone who knows that love is not just a feeling, but a daily choice, a sacred vow. And when the world gets loud, when the pressure rises, when others tell him he's wasting time, he returns to silence. He returns to prayer, because he knows that the God who gave him his calling hasn't forgotten his longing, that the one who trusted him to portray Jesus on screen knows the kind of woman who can stand beside such a calling. Until then, Jonathan waits. Not with frustration, not with desperation, but with quiet strength, with a heart that is open but not desperate, ready but not rushed, because he knows that real love, the kind that lasts, is worth the cost, even if that cost is years of loneliness, misunderstood intentions, and nights spent pouring his heart out to the sky. Fame has taught him what he doesn't want: superficial connections, shallow attraction, performative faith. It's also made him even more protective of the love he does want: sacred, quiet, honest, and eternal. And until she comes, he will wait. Not because he's afraid of love, but because he's certain of what love should be. In a world where everything is rushed, instant matches, speed dating, fast flings, Jonathan Roumie has chosen the narrow road: patience. This isn't the kind of patience that waits with frustration, tapping fingers against time. It's the kind of patience born from trust, the kind that knows God's timing is never late, never early, always perfect. Jonathan's journey isn't about finding just anyone to fill the empty space beside him. It's about preparing his heart for the right one. And that means surrendering even his deepest desire, romantic love, to the one who knows him better than he knows himself. Some might say, "Why wait so long?" Others might whisper, "Isn't it time to just settle down?" But Jonathan isn't moved by the pressure of culture. He's moved by the voice of God. He's seen what happens when you move ahead of divine timing, how rushed decisions lead to restless hearts, how temporary comfort can cost long-term peace. So, he waits, not as a man who is lost, but as a man who is being led. That waiting doesn't mean he's standing still. Jonathan continues to grow, spiritually, emotionally, and personally. He surrounds himself with a circle of mentors and friends who challenge him to stay rooted in truth. He reads scripture daily, not out of obligation, but out of deep hunger. He prays not just for love, but for wisdom to recognize love when it arrives. And in this quiet season of waiting, God is shaping him. He's learning how to listen more and speak less, how to lead with gentleness, not ego, how to express vulnerability without shame. Because love, true love, isn't built on perfection. It's built on grace. And grace only flows when we stop pretending we don't need it. Jonathan is also healing the parts of himself that were once hidden behind roles. Before the chosen, there were wounds left by rejection, insecurity, fear of being overlooked. But through Christ, those wounds are being transformed into strength. Now, he walks not with the swagger of fame, but with the quiet strength of someone who knows he is already loved by the one who created him. And when it comes to the woman he's praying for, Jonathan imagines her as someone real, someone who isn't afraid of his past, who doesn't idolize his present, and who's willing to walk into an uncertain future, holding tightly to God's hand and his. He hopes she's a woman of prayer, a woman who doesn't need a stage to shine, but who glows in the ordinary, someone who can cry with him in hard seasons, laugh with him in quiet moments, and worship with him in every storm. This kind of woman isn't found through chance. She's revealed through faithfulness. And so Jonathan keeps walking. He travels for events, speaks at faith gatherings, continues filming The Chosen, and returns home to a quiet space where he listens for God's voice, not in thunder or earthquakes, but in whispers, in stillness, in that place where love begins, not on screen, but in the heart. There are days when the loneliness creeps in, nights when he wishes he could share his thoughts with someone lying beside him, moments when the applause fades and the silence feels too loud, but even then, he chooses trust. He believes God has not forgotten him. He knows that the same God who called him to portray Jesus will be faithful in writing his personal love story too. And when that moment comes, when their paths finally meet, he won't question it. He'll know, because it will feel like grace. Not flashy, not rushed, not forced, but sacred. Two souls, shaped by waiting, seasoned by faith, meeting at the altar of divine timing. Until then, Jonathan continues to walk the path set before him, not with bitterness, not with fear, but with joy. Because he knows that every step, every delay, every silent night is leading him towards something beautiful. He isn't just waiting for love, he's preparing for it. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful act of faith of all. So now you know, the man who plays Jesus for millions is walking a quiet, often lonely path behind the scenes. Not because he's broken, not because love passed him by, but because he chose something most people are too afraid to choose. A life that waits on purpose instead of settling for convenience. Jonathan Roumie could have had the spotlight, the fame, the romance that comes easy, but he chose the harder road, the road of faith, surrender, and patience. And while that road is lonely, it's also full of hope, because deep down he believes something powerful, that real love, God-ordained love, is worth waiting for.